friend ever tells you they love putting together AN lines, you're gonna do two things. One, you're gonna give them a hug and ask if they're okay. And two, you're gonna make them your best friend, because when the world needs psychopaths, when it's coming to an end, that's gonna be your guy. So, So it's been a while since I filmed. I mentioned a couple videos ago that I had a pretty bad cold. That's something else. I've been in and out of the hospital the past week, so sorry for a delay in updates. We got this project over here, which is done. We're just waiting on a sensor. Nice R33 Skyline. Anyway, this thing we haven't really touched, except for I got a couple hours and I was like, let me try to get some stuff done. So I came down here and just like put some fittings on stuff, because we got in a bunch of fittings that we were waiting on. So we got all the AN fittings and adapters and everything for the sensor block. I mounted the sensor block. Woohoo. I got the AN fittings for this, except I have a change of plans with that. But we got this 8 AN fitting there. I got the weld bung for this in. I got the weld bung for the fuel rail in. I swapped out the bung on that so that we could do dash 8s. I got the dash 8 flex fuel adapters for that, so that's ready to go. Got a bunch of AN hose. So I got, fittings down there. That's for the coolant pressure sensor. I got one sitting right there. That's for the oil pressure sensor. So I got a bunch of stuff in the works. I got in the sensors for our clutch pressure. For the slipper system, I gotta set up, we got this put in here for the crank pressure. The thing that I'm changing is the wastegate and boost control situation. Instead of doing that in AN line, I'm actually gonna do it in push lock fittings, just because it's a lot easier to take that off and replace stuff. Whereas if an AN line breaks or something like that, if I'm at the track, that's a little more complicated, and that's the kind of thing that would fail. So we're not gonna do the boost control stuff using AN line. That's gonna be push connected. The connector going to our fuel pressure regulator, however, is still going to be a dash 4 AN line, which is what this adapter is. Couldn't find any of them in black. It's like nobody had them, so unfortunately I had to get a blue one. So, whatever. I haven't done any more wiring. I honestly, I was out here for like an hour, maybe 2, the whole of last week, when I wasn't not here. So the wiring, I gotta wait for somebody to come by because I need a second set of hands so I can do something. So in the meantime, just because it's a low effort kind of deal, I'm gonna just get these AN things all fitted up and connected. I'm gonna get started with the vacuum block and getting the MAC valve and the wastegate converted over to the push lock fittings, just because it's relatively simple to do. And if I get tired, I can, take a break without being in the middle of something. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, so we have our blow-off valve line plumbed in. We have the line going to the fuel tech plumbed in. We have our MAC valve plumbed into our wastegate. And then this line right here will go right after the turbo for our boost reference. I like this, especially because of this fitting right here. So instead of having to run a T somewhere, it's right on there, which is really nice. So that's all hooked up. I've got play in here. I gotta tighten this down obviously, but I got enough play in here for engine moving around. It's not gonna rip anything out. This is on a pivot, so even if it moves too much, everything can move around. So next we need to do the fuel pressure regulator line to here. Kind of all hooked up in there. So what I need to do is actually mount this now, where it's gonna go, so that I can run that dash 8 line. I'm gonna run it through this hoop, but not that one, because that's gonna be too much of a bend, and it's a kind of a waste of money to get a friggin' 135-degree bend for that. Worst case scenario, I can actually just spin this around. So I'm gonna run that, and that'll hook that up. The brake booster is just gonna be a hose. It's the easiest way to do that. That's just a brake booster. And then once that's done, this part of the distribution block is just gonna be an AN line that runs down and around to the intake manifold. So I'm gonna take this off to weld the fitting on there. So just picking away at stuff. I am gonna put a grommet there at some point. Somebody remind me if I don't. All right, so I went ahead and did pretty much every AN line except for the fuel ones, just to get it over with. So we have this line here, which I still need to just secure down, but that's on and tight. So fuel pressure regulator is ready to go. I have all these sensors and plugs tight. I have our back pressure hooked up and tight. Everything's tight. This one is our crank pressure. So that one's tight, runs down. I got to secure these down, up and around to there. So that's done. This is the oil pressure one, which runs down across there and there. That one's done and tight. The only one I didn't do is the coolant pressure one. And that is because I need to get the radiator in here and stuff and figure out where I'm gonna put that fitting. But that is done. So I just have the fuel line to do, which I need to modify the fuel rail before I do that. So that's gotta get done soon. Most of the air and pressure stuff is done, which means I can wire it all. I'm gonna do a whole separate video about the clutch slipper that we're gonna use. There's a system on the market that's, I think, way too expensive for what it is, so I've designed my own, which operates in pretty much the same exact way. I'm working on seeing if I can combine it with the Fuel Tech software at the moment. Not looking like I will, but I've already written up some of the code for a microcontroller to do it myself. But that's for another day. That pressure sensor is just gonna live wherever I end up putting the solenoid for that. If a friend ever tells you they love putting together AN lines, you're gonna do two things. One, you're gonna give them a hug and ask if they're okay. And two, you're gonna make them your best friend, because when the world needs psychopaths when it's coming to an end, that's gonna be your guy. So, yeah. All right, so we got our wires, or connectors I should say, on our pressure sensors. We even got it on here. I was gonna run it through the firewall here, but I'm just gonna have all the wiring going in one spot, and I'll just have two separate holes to keep everything separated. But everything runs through here. I have to get a bigger clamp for here. But it's all held in there. We got this one hooked up. The only one I have to run a cable for still is the clutch pressure sensor. So I gotta play with where I'm gonna put that. I have the sensor and I have the adapter I need to mount it. So I may as well just figure that out now so that I can also run that wire. I know it's gonna go into this bundle here regardless. It's just a matter of where and how long it's gotta be. So I think I'm gonna play with that for a few minutes. But that stuff's gonna be ready to wire. So everything inside the car is pretty much ready to wire. I just need a second person here to help me just verify pinouts and things like that on this side and that side. It's kind of hard to do both sides at the same time. So electronics wise, we're like there, almost. Yeah, so let me play around with the clutch slipper location and the pressure sensor location. I'll get back to you. All right, so that's where that pressure sensor is gonna go. So we have my normal aftermarket braided clutch line upgrade. It goes into this, down, under, and into there. Fits nice. And then the pressure sensor is on that side where it needs to be. And like I said, I will explain how that's gonna work in its own dedicated video when I set it up. It's pretty neat. I'm also gonna do a video on how to set up a non-digital clutch slipper for like half the cost of the ones that people sell online. I'll make a component list of what you need to make a slipper, because I get people need to make money. I'm not trying to undermine that, but the amount of money they're charging for 3 parts is a little on the extreme side. So that's where we're gonna leave that for now. So I have to run these wires back to inside the cabin at some point. Not worried about that right now. That stuff's not all tightened down. Still needs to be tightened down so that I can bleed the clutch, but we're not there yet. But I've gotten quite a bit done today, if I do say so. Need to run in the stuff for Mac valve. The wires need to run in for that, so I'll do that. Temp sensor. I need to do the goddamn temp sensor. I also need to do the intake air temp sensor, which we have a pre-intercooler temp sensor and a post-intercooler temp sensor. That was part of a different setup. So I might leave those sensors in there and do something with that later and put another intake air temp sensor in the charge pipe. And if I do that, I'm going to put it over here next to the blow-off valve so that it's not at the intercooler. So I need to do that too. So that's one last bit of wiring, that wire, and then I'm pretty sure that's all the wires that need to go into the car. I'm like 99% sure. I still need to run the wheel speed sensors out to the front, but those are gonna be their own separate harness, and also not touching that until we get the car up and running, because we don't need that to get the car running. F you, Nissan. Just f you.
Like and subscribe, guys.